students, in this video we are going to see part 2 chapter 9 heredity and evolution. In this part we are going to see Mendels experiment on inheritance. Before seeing Mendels experiment, we will see some things which is related to Mendels experiment on inheritance. They are: what is inheritance, who is Gregor Johann Mendel, reasons why Mendel chose Pisum sativum for his experiment, what are called traits and types of traits, that is dominant and recessive traits or dominant and recessive gene based on its expression in the first generation, and types of traits, that is homozygous and heterozygous traits based on similarity and dissimilarity of genes present, Mendel's 3 laws of inheritance, monohybrid and dihybrid cross. First we will see what is inheritance. Inheritance is transfer or passing of characters or traits or genes from one generation to another generation, or inheritance is transfer of characters from parents to offsprings or young ones. That is called inheritance. And who is called Gregor Johann Mendel? Students, the topic is Mendel's experiment on inheritance. Mendel's full name is Gregor Johann Mendel. He was born in Austria in 1822. He was a scientist and he is called father of genetics because he contributed more to the field of genetics, and he did many experiments related to inheritance, that is a transfer of characters from one generation to another generation, and his studies lead to the study of heredity, and his period of experiments on inheritance is nearly 50 years, that is from 1833 to 1884, and his studies yield 3 laws, that is law of dominance, law of segregation and law of independent assortment. That laws we'll discuss in topic Mendel's law of inheritance, and this is about Gregor Johann Mendel. Gregor Johann Mendel is called father of genetics because he contributed more and he did many experiments to prove the inheritance of characters from one generation to another generation. And next, reasons why Pisum sativum is selected by Mendel for his experiment. And Pisum sativum is commonly called garden pea plant, and this plant was chosen by Gregor Johann Mendel for his experiment on inheritance because Pisum sativum have many characters which helped in his experiment. The reasons why he selected Pisum sativum for his experiment is, first one, the plant is very small, so it is very easy to handle to his experiment. Second one, it grows faster and it can be sown each and every year, so this helps in seeing the results of inheritance of characters from one generation to another generation. And one more reason is the Pisum sativum flowers are bisexual. Bisexual means both male reproductive part and female reproductive part is present in the same flower, that is male reproductive part is stamen, female reproductive part is pistil, both are present in the same flower. So the flower of Pisum sativum or garden pea plant is bisexual. So because of bisexual character, self-pollination can be easily done, and also cross-pollination also can be done. What is self-pollination? Pollination is transfer of pollen grains from anther to stigma. Self-pollination is done in same flower or different flower of the same plant. So this is bisexual flower. This self-pollination can be done easily, and also cross-pollination also possible. What is cross-pollination? The transfer of pollen from anther to stigma of different flowers of different plant is called cross pollination. So these are the different reasons why Gregor Johann Mendel chose Pisum sativum for his experiment. And next one is traits. What are called traits? Traits are nothing but genetic makeup or a character or gene. There are two types of traits, that is dominant trait and recessive trait. What is called dominant trait? Dominant trait is nothing but which express exclusively in first generation, that is called dominant trait. See student, in this is the cross between dominant trait and recessive trait. See, this is dominant, the one which is indicated in capital letter, that is capital T. Capital T is a dominant one. This is a cross between Pisum sativum plant, choosing one character, that is height. Dominant plant is parent is tall, and recessive parent is dwarf, that is small. This capital T donate dominant gene. This small t represents recessive gene. Dominant gene is nothing but the gene which expresses exclusively in the presence or absence of recessive one. That is, see here, when both the plant dominant gene and recessive gene is crossed, the resultant young one or the resultant offspring in F1 generation is tall, because see here, this is a gene of tall plant. This small t is a gene of dwarf plant. When it is crossed, we get tall plant, and capital T is expressed mode, which is a dominant, and the resultant one is tall. Recessive gene is a gene which expresses in the absence of dominant gene and will not express in the presence of dominant gene. And see here, this cross explains you about a recessive trait. See, small t, this is a cross between two dwarf plant, that is recessive character. This small t denotes recessive trait. This also denotes recessive trait. When two here happens in the absence of dominant gene, no any dominant gene is present, both parents are having recessive gene. So when these two recessive genes are crossed, the resultant offspring will be having dwarf character, because the recessive gene expresses in the absence of dominant gene. If any dominant gene is present, only the dominant gene will be expressed here. So here dominant gene is absent, so recessive gene is expressed in the F1 generation or first generation. So the young ones will be same to as a parent which is having recessive gene. So this is about dominant and recessive gene. Dominant gene is the dominant gene is a gene which have ability to express itself in the first generation, and recessive gene is the gene which will express only in the absence of dominant gene. Next one is homozygous and heterozygous traits. Homozygous, homo means same. Homozygous traits are the traits which are having same alleles. See here, same. So this is homozygous traits. Same, tall. See, capital T, capital T. So this denotes tall plant having same genes or character or same genetic makeup. So this capital T is a example of homozygous trait. Here this also small t, recessive trait, pure breed, that is small t is an example of homozygous. Two genetic makeup is same, so it is called homozygous trait. Heterozygous trait is nothing but the genetic makeup will be different here. So see here, this is heterozygous trait. So it is having capital T and small t, that is dominant and recessive. Finally the dominant will express itself. This genetic makeup, capital T and small t, is a heterozygous trait. So homozygous trait means homo means same. The homozygous trait having same genetic makeup. Example, capital T, capital T. Heterozygous traits are the genetic makeup will be different. That is capital T, small t. So this is about homozygous and heterozygous trait. Next one is Mendel's Law of Inheritance. As I told already, Gregor Johann Mendel is called father of genetics, and he was a scientist. He did many experiments on inheritance, and he did experiments about how the genes are transferring from one generation to another generation. And through his experiment, he proposed 3 laws, that is law of dominance, law of segregation, and law of independent assortment. What is called law of dominance? Law of dominance states that the dominant gene expresses more vigorously. So as we told, see here in this cross, dominant gene expresses, see capital T crossed with small t, this is dominant makeup, genetic makeup, and this is recessive genetic makeup, and when this is crossed we get tall plant with genetic makeup capital T and small t. Here capital T, that is dominant gene, is expressed more. This law is called law of dominance. So what is called law of dominance? The dominant gene expresses more exclusively. Second law is law of segregation. Law of segregation states that offspring or resulted young ones receives gene from each parent. See here, this is resultant offspring. It receives gene from each parent. See here, capital T, it receives from dominant parent, and small t, it receives from recessive parent. So this resultant child or resultant offspring having a gene of 2 parents. So it received genes from 2 parents. So this is called law of segregation. Third one is law of independent assortment. Independent assortment. Assortment means separation. The genes will be separated or assorted independently. So one gene will not have influence over others. So this is called independent assortment. So independent assortment we can see in dihybrid cross in other coming parts. Last one is monohybrid and dihybrid cross. What is called monohybrid cross? Mono means same. Mono means one or single. Hybrid means process of making crossbreeds. So monohybrid means crossing plants considering only one character, that is height. So see, this is a best example of monohybrid cross, because here only one character is selected, that is height. So height, one is tall, another one is tall. So here the character considered is, in this cross the character considered is height. So what is monohybrid cross? Mono means single, hybrid means making crossbreed. Monohybrid cross is a cross between 2 plants considering only one visible contrasting characters. Contrasting means height, that is height, tall, and dwarf, that is dwarf means short. So contrasting is tall and dwarf, that is called monohybrid cross. Dihybrid crosses, di means 2, crossing plant considering 2 different visible contrasting characters. Example, seed shape of Pisum sativum, seed color of Pisum sativum, 2 different or visible contrasting character. So if we take seed shape, round and wrinkle, so both are contrasting character, and seed color yellow and green, so both are contrasting character. So 2 visible characters are selected in dihybrid cross, that is seed shape and seed color. So this is called dihybrid cross. So students, in this part we studied some things related to Mendel's experiment on inheritance. In next part. In next video we'll discuss about what is monohybrid cross and dihybrid cross in detail, and we'll see crossing of Pisum sativum plants by Mendel. That is monohybrid cross we'll see in next part. Bye students.